Everyone's arguing that return to office mandates are about control or culture. What do you think it is? The real reason is good news for you because you think you're dreading forced socializing, but once you see what it truly is, that dread will disappear. So let's talk about return to office mandates, or RTO as we'll refer to them today. And I want to start by validating some comments that I've been seeing. I've read hundreds of return to office complaints the last few months, and buried under all that anger is the exact same sentence, worded just 100 different ways. Go look at any thread about Amazon or Disney or Google's return to office mandates, and you'll see thousands of comments from smart, capable people who are furious. And a lot of that anger is, well, I'll say it's completely fair because commutes cost money and time, and open floor plans are much more loud and distracting than your living room. But if you go past the loudest complaints, there's a pattern underneath, and it's the one I want to talk about today. A huge number of people aren't just mad about the commute, they're mad about being pushed back into small talk and forced collaboration and performing a version of themselves they never had to perform on a video call that they could mute and just leave the second it ended. What I keep noticing is that the people saying this the loudest are usually the sharpest, most technically capable people in the organization. I'm talking about the engineers and analysts and researchers, people who spent their remote years getting incredibly good at their actual jobs and getting completely out of practice at the low-stakes human stuff that used to just happen by accident, like saying hello in hallways. So today, I want to make an argument that the mandate isn't really the problem. Your relationship to the thing the mandate is forcing you back into, that's the problem. And it's fixable in a way that has nothing to do with becoming a different person. At Social Confidence Pro, this is exactly who we work with. Highly analytical professionals who are excellent at the work and have quietly let their informal social skills go soft because for a few years, they simply didn't need them. If that's landing anywhere close to home, just stay with me because I'm going to give you a completely different way to think about the thing that you're dreading walking back into. So hit subscribe first because this is the kind of thing that you'll want to come back to. Now here's the false choice that I see people making on these threads over and over. They frame it as be my authentic, focused, quiet self versus fake it and perform enthusiasm that I don't feel. And when you frame it that way, of course you resent it. Nobody wants to fake enthusiasm for 20 minutes about somebody's weekend plans. But that's not actually the choice in front of you. That's the story your identity is telling you to protect the version of yourself that you've built. The real choice is much smaller than that. And once you see it, just how small it actually is, most of the dread is going to go away. Let's talk about what remote work just quietly let you avoid, because I don't think most people have named this honestly yet. For several years, your calendar told you exactly when to be on. You showed up, you did the task, and you logged off. Nobody watched you walk to your desk, or nobody caught you in the kitchen for 90 unscripted seconds. Every interaction had a stated purpose, a start time, and an end time. And if you're someone who finds ambiguous social situations just draining, that structure was a gift that let your output speak for you almost completely. But it also meant you didn't have to practice something that used to get built automatically just by existing in a shared physical space with other people. I'm talking about the totally unscripted, low-stakes, 30-second exchange that has no agenda, no clear purpose other than two people acknowledging each other exist. That skill doesn't feel like a skill because it used to be automatic. It only starts to feel like a skill once you've gone a few years without practicing it daily. And now you're being asked to do it on demand without warm-up and as if there hasn't been a years-long gap. The people who are handling this transition well aren't necessarily more extroverted than you. They just never let that specific muscle atrophy, or they built back faster because they didn't fuse it with their identity the way that you might be fusing it right now. Which brings me to the identity piece, because This is where the real freeze lives. Somewhere in the last few years, a lot of analytical professionals built a story that goes something like this. I'm not a small talk person, or I'm a substance person. I don't do surface level, I do depth. And there's a version of that story that's just true and fine. It's a preference. But there's another version of that story doing something sneakier. It's protecting you from a specific fear, and the fear isn't the one you'd expect. Last time, we talked about the fear of being wrong in front of a room. This is a different fear, and it might actually be more common in the exact audience I work with. It's the fear of being insincere, of performing warmth that you don't feel and having someone see through it, of small talk feeling like you're learning to communicate for the first time. And if you value precision and honesty, faking anything feels physically uncomfortable. So your brain does something very clever, and it reclassifies the entire category of casual interactions as a waste of time, which conveniently means you never have to risk doing it badly. There's a reframe I want you to consider, and that's that you don't need to perform warmth that you don't truly feel. It's never necessary. Now, before I give you the tools, I want to show you why this matters for your career, and not just your comfort in unscheduled interactions. There's a piece of research that comes from Stanford sociologist Mark Granovetter that explains almost exactly why the just let my work speak for itself strategy limits people. It's called the strength of weak ties. What he found fascinating was how people found their jobs. Would you be surprised to learn that it wasn't close friends and family who delivered the best opportunities? It was casual acquaintances, people they saw occasionally rather than often, who passed along the information that actually changed the trajectory of their career. And that's how they found their job. So the people you already know well tend to know the same things you know and move in the same circles that you move in. Weak ties, the people you nod at, the person 2 teams over, the guy from another department you've talked to 3 times, they tend to sit in different circles entirely. They're the ones carrying information you don't already have. And now, some 50 years later, that research has been tested at massive scale because a multi-year study from LinkedIn involving researchers from MIT, Harvard, and Stanford tracked millions of users and confirmed that weak ties consistently outperform both strong ties and total strangers when it came to landing a new role or opportunity. Here's why I'm telling you this. Those hallway conversations and kitchen small talk, the 60 seconds before a meeting starts, none of that is filler or fluff. That's the exact texture of a weak tie forming. It's not networking in the way that the word makes you uncomfortable. It's just low effort, repeated contact, and repeated low effort contact is precisely the mechanism that builds the kind of relationship that changes what opportunities come your way. Think about the effect remote work had on your network. It didn't just remove noise and distraction, it pruned every weak tie. Video calls only connect you to people you already had a reason to schedule time with. There's no version of a video call that replicates the person from another team that happens to be grabbing a coffee at the same time as you. That accidental exposure is gone unless you're physically present in it. And RTO, despite what you believe is wrong with it, is putting you back in the room where that exposure can happen naturally. So the resentment about forced collaboration might actually be pointed in the wrong target, because it's not the socializing that's the problem. It's that nobody ever taught you how to do it efficiently, so it feels a lot heavier than it needs to be. Here are the 3 things to use the next time you're in the office. Number 1, I want you to use the 2-line rule. You don't need a topic prepared. You need 2 lines, and then you're done. That's it. Line 1 is an observation or a question. Line 2 is a follow-up on whatever they say back. That's it. You're not required to sustain a 5-minute conversation. Most people massively overestimate how long a successful interaction needs to last. Number two, I want you to trade performance for curiosity. This is the piece that fixes the insincerity problem directly. You're not trying to be entertaining, warm, or impressive. You're gathering one small piece of information that you didn't have before. What someone's working on, what team just changed, what's actually happening 2 floors up that never makes it into a status update. Ask one specific genuine question instead of one generic vague one. How's it going invites a script, and what are you working on this week invites a real answer. Because now you're just having a normal exchange about real information instead of performing a greeting. Number three, I want you to pick 2 or 3 people and go deep with them instead of treating them as if you're accumulating more shallow relationships. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that you need to become the most sociable person in the office. That's not the goal. Instead, I want you to just choose 2 or 3 people you already have some natural overlap with and just let your low effort contact concentrate there. There's no question that light contact with the same few people, it builds familiarity very fast. And familiarity is what makes future interactions with them feel easy instead of full of effort. Now, more often, we think of these types of conversations just taking place with people outside the workplace. And today, I'm going to challenge you to answer why that is. You're not building a network of 100 people. You're building 3 or 4 weak ties who might eventually be the ones who pass you information or a warning or an opportunity nobody else thought to mention to you. Now let's talk about why this shows up in who gets ahead, because I don't want this to sound like advice for making the office more pleasant, because this is advice about your career. When leadership is deciding who's ready for more responsibility and internal and external visibility and trust in all these areas, they're not only looking at your output, they're pulling together an impression of you from a dozen small informal signals. For example, who seems easy to work with and who they feel comfortable putting in front of a client, who they actually know beyond the name on your deliverable, and whose demeanor they're familiar with. A lot of that impression gets built in exactly the spaces that you might be avoiding right now. You know what I mean? The unplanned 2-minute hallway conversations that create ties but don't show up on a performance review. This is in part why a lot of these mandates exist in the first place. Remote work made people harder to read informally, and it's genuinely difficult to build an intuitive sense of who's dependable and who's a team player, who you trust more, purely from scheduled calls and agendas. RTO is a blunt, clumsy-ish attempt to get that informal read back. So the mandate itself may be somewhat poorly executed, but the underlying need, it's totally legitimate. It's not fair that a few seconds of hallway conversation can carry weight that an entire quarter of excellent work doesn't carry on its own. But that speaks more to how we operate as humans in dynamic settings. And I agree that it's not fair that the people who are naturally comfortable with this get an advantage that they didn't earn through skill, just through temperament. None of that's fair. But knowing that it's true means that you finally get to do something about it instead of continuing to lose ground to people who are never actually more capable than you. No one's asking you to become someone you're not. You are the one who applied for the job. And your employer wants you to build a genuinely small, genuinely learnable skill that's brief and specific and low effort contact. It's just repeated every day. That's it. This connects to something I talk about constantly, which is building what I call your second self. The version of you that's confident and present without needing to become a different person to get there. Your second self doesn't fake the magnetism or the empathy or enthusiasm about somebody's weekend plans. It just shows up, it says 2 lines, it asks 1 real question, and lets the interaction be exactly as brief as it needs to be. So if you've been dreading the return to office because you thought it meant pasting a smile on your face every day, know that it doesn't. It means building a much smaller, more specific skill than the one you've been dreading. And it's one that you can start practicing in your very next hallway conversation. The Social Skills Mastery Podcast goes deeper into exactly this kind of identity and skill work every single week. So if this reframed anything for you, that's where I'd go next. The link's in the description. You built a career being excellent at the work. Don't let 11 seconds of unscripted conversation be the thing standing between you and what you've already earned. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.